I paid $40,000 for our family's Paris vacation, but my daughter-in-law ditched me at the airport saying, "Oops, forgot your ticket." They had no idea the all-natural supplement I'd packed in her suitcase would turn their 3-week dream trip into a living hell. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. I paid $40K for our family Paris trip. My daughter-in-law, Tiffany, said she'd handle all the bookings. But at the airport, standing at the first-class counter, she gave me a look of perfect theatrical panic. "Oops," she said, her voice a brittle whisper. "Judith, I forgot your ticket." The agent at the international terminal didn't look up from her screen. Her voice was flat, bored, and final. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. I'm only showing 2 passengers on this booking, a Keith and a Tiffany. The flight is completely full. There is no Judith on this flight." Tiffany's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. It was a masterpiece of performance. "No," she gasped. "That's impossible. I booked 3. I checked it a dozen times." My son Keith rushed to her side, his face pale. "Tiff? What's wrong?" "They're saying I didn't book your mother's ticket," she wailed, turning to me, her eyes already brimming with perfect fraudulent tears. "Judith, I feel absolutely terrible. I've ruined everything, our perfect family trip." I just stood there. I didn't speak. I am a retired pharmacist. My life was spent in a world of quiet precision, of reading fine print, of understanding that a single misplaced decimal can be the difference between a cure and a catastrophe. Tiffany did not do oops. A flash hit me. Me, sitting at my kitchen table, my late husband's chair still empty, the silence of the house of physical weight. My hope that this trip, this one grand gesture, could fill that silence. Another flash. The bank transfer. I watched the number on the screen. $40,000. It was a significant sum, but I'd been careful. A lifetime of disciplined frugality, of shrewd investments, all meant for a retirement I was supposed to share. Instead, I was investing it in this memory. A final flash, sharp and cold. Tiffany at my house a week later, her smile bright and non-negotiable. "Judith, let me handle everything," she'd purred, tablet in hand. "It's what I do. My blog, The Gilded Compass, has connections. It will be my gift to you, a completely stress-free experience." When I tried to suggest the little bistro my husband and I loved, she'd waved a dismissive hand. "A bistro? Oh, Judith, that's a bit dusty. My followers want aspirational." Keith had just nodded along, proud of his expert wife. Now, back at the airport, Tiffany's performance was reaching its climax. She took a deep, shuddering breath, grabbing my hands. "We can't change it now," she said, her voice thick with fake sorrow. "The flight is boarding. Keith and we have to go. The hotel, the reservations, everything is non-refundable." She gave me a look of profound, condescending pity, the look one gives a child or a stray. "You should go home, Judith," she said, patting my hand. "Maybe next trip." My son Keith just stared at the floor. He couldn't look at me. His silence was his confession. "I am so sorry, Mom," he mumbled. It was not an apology. It was a surrender. "Come on, darling," Tiffany said, taking his arm, her voice already shifting from tragic to soothing. She pulled him away toward the security gate. A perfect, beautiful couple, off on their perfect vacation, paid for with my $40,000. They thought I was out of earshot. They were wrong. As they walked away, I saw Tiffany lean in and whisper something in his ear, her voice a low, triumphant purr I heard as clearly as a diagnosis. "See?" she whispered. "I told you it would be fine. Now we can have a real romantic vacation." The words hit me not with a crash, but with a click. The quiet, satisfying click of a lock falling into place. It was not a mistake. It was a plan. A cold, cruel, meticulously executed theft. They disappeared into the crowd. They thought they had left me behind, a forgotten, dusty old woman. They had no idea that the most important part of my gift, my real true gift, was already packed, traveling with them, tucked away like a potent personal secret in the inner pocket of my daughter-in-law's suitcase. The taxi ride home from the airport was a journey through a new and unfamiliar landscape. The hot shock of betrayal was already cooling, leaving in its wake a profound, unsettling, and deeply efficient calm. The woman who had driven to the airport, the hopeful, grieving mother, was gone. The woman riding home was someone else. She was a pharmacist, and her mind was a cold, quiet laboratory. I looked out the window at the gray city skyline, but I wasn't seeing the buildings. I was seeing molecules. I was thinking about dosages, about compounds, about the beautiful, predictable, and unforgiving laws of cause and effect. I thought about the gift I had packed 2 days before. It had been an instinct, a quiet, clinical thought born from 40 years of observation. Tiffany was a high-strung perfectionist. I knew her anxiety always manifested in one specific way: a nervous, irritable stomach. My movements had been automatic, precise. I'd gone to the small apothecary cabinet in my bathroom, a beautiful old wooden thing where I still kept my compounds. I snapped on a pair of latex gloves. I pulled out 2 glass jars. The first was simple psyllium husk, a fine white powder, a natural fiber supplement. Harmless. The second was senna leaf powder, highly concentrated. In the world of natural medicine, it is known as nature's broom, a powerful, effective, and deeply disruptive stimulant laxative. Separately, they were effective. Combined in the right ratio, they were a recipe for a swift, dramatic, and unforgettable gastrointestinal event. My hands were steady. I measured them out on a digital scale, a precise 40-60 ratio. Psyllium for bulk, senna for persuasion. I poured the blended powder into a beautiful high-end silk paper sachet that had once held expensive tea. I tucked it into an elegant envelope. On the front, in my neatest script, I wrote, "Pour la régulation parisienne," a gentle, all-natural daily fiber supplement for the discerning traveler. The plan then had been a gentle one, a just in case. But then I'd gone to their apartment to drop off a travel guide for Keith. He wasn't home, but Tiffany was. Her bedroom an explosion of designer luggage. Her main suitcase was open on the bed. When she was called away by a delivery, a new, colder thought entered my mind. Why give it to her? Why not just place it? My hand moved with its own will. I'd tucked the envelope deep into the inner zippered pocket of her suitcase, a place she wouldn't find it until she had already unpacked. A small, ticking time bomb. Now back in my house, the kettle began to whistle, screaming into the silence. I made my tea. I thought of them, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, sipping champagne, celebrating their clever coup. I felt no guilt. I felt only the quiet click of a perfectly calibrated equation. Cut 2. Paris, 7 hours later. They glided through customs. A private car whisked them to their grand hotel on the Champs-Élysées. The suite was a palace, with silk wallpaper and a private terrace overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Tiffany, of course, went straight to work. Her phone was in her hand. The view was not a thing to be experienced. It was a thing to be leveraged. She took a picture of the welcome champagne, a picture of her massive ring on the terrace railing, a smug, beautiful selfie of her and Keith. Then, the artifact that proved her guilt. She spent 20 minutes crafting the perfect Instagram caption. Finally, a peaceful Parisian escape. Sometimes the most luxurious thing in the world is a little bit of quiet. So excited to share this incredible, intimate journey with my one and only. Some trips are just better with a smaller group. Parisian dream, couple goals. The post went live. The narrative was set. Then she began to unpack. As she arranged her toiletries, she found it. The small, elegant, and unfamiliar envelope. She opened it. Her brow furrowed. She read the small attached note, also in my neatest script. My dearest Tiffany, just a little something to help you stay feeling your best. Travel can be so disruptive. This is a wonderful all-natural supplement I use myself. A spoonful every morning should keep you feeling light and lovely. With love, Judith. A small, condescending smile touched her lips. She held it up for Keith. "Oh, that's sweet of her," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Your mother packed me a laxative." That evening was supposed to be the grand opening of their dream. They had a 9 p.m. reservation at a legendary 3-star restaurant, a jewel in the crown of Tiffany's stolen itinerary. As Tiffany was getting ready, a blur of expensive makeup brushes, she felt a slight twinge. The long flight, the champagne. It left her feeling bloated, less than her usual perfect self. Then she remembered the sachet, the gentle supplement from her thoughtful, simple mother-in-law. "Oh, perfect," she said to Keith. "I'm going to try that stuff your mother gave me, just to, get things moving before the big meal." She swept into the opulent marble bathroom. She opened the elegant sachet. The fine odorless powder looked pure. It looked healthy. It looked expensive. She mixed a generous heaping teaspoonful into a tall glass of Evian. The powder dissolved instantly. She drank it down, a small, self-satisfied smile on her face. The first 20 minutes at the restaurant were a dream. The room was a hushed, beautiful space of dark wood and crisp white linens. The air smelled of truffles. Tiffany was in heaven, already composing the Instagram caption in her head. The first course arrived, a single, perfect langoustine, poached in butter. It was a work of art. Tiffany took a delicate, reverent bite. It was, she would later recall with tragic irony, exquisite. And then it arrived. It was not a gentle twinge. It was not indigestion. It was a low, ominous, and deeply urgent cramp that seized her abdomen with a sudden, shocking violence. Her face, which had been a mask of culinary delight, went bone white. A fine sheen of cold sweat broke out on her forehead. "Are you all right, Tiff?" Keith asked, his own face a picture of concern. "I'm fine," she managed to say through gritted teeth. Just a, but it wasn't just anything. It was a declaration of war from her own internal organs. The cramp intensified, twisting into a hot knot of pure agonizing misery. She knew with horrifying certainty that she had a very, very small window of time before a deeply and publicly humiliating disaster occurred. She threw her napkin onto the table. "Excuse me," she hissed. She made a frantic, desperate, and deeply unladylike dash across the hushed, elegant dining room, her high heels clicking a panicked rhythm on the polished floor. The dream dinner had just turned into a nightmare. She emerged 10 minutes later, pale and shaken. She had just sat down when the second course arrived, delicate seared foie gras. She managed a single hesitant bite, her eyes wide with the new, unfamiliar terror of her own body. A low, ominous gurgle from the depths of her abdomen was the signal. Her time was up. Again. She excused herself with a strained, brittle smile and made another, slightly more frantic, dash to the ladies' room. Keith was left alone, a handsome man in a tuxedo, pushing exquisite food around his plate. His appetite gone. The other diners, the quiet elite of Paris, were beginning to notice. The beautiful American woman who kept running to the bathroom was becoming a quiet, fascinating floor show. By the time the main course arrived, Tiffany was a ghost, a pale, trembling specter. They were forced to leave before the cheese course. The taxi ride back to the hotel was a tense, silent, agonizing affair. The unforgettable 3 Michelin-star dinner had indeed been unforgettable, but for all, and I do mean all, of the wrong reasons. Tiffany had spent the most exclusive and expensive evening of her life in the one room that is the same in every restaurant in the world, no matter how many stars it has. And I, back in my quiet home, slept the deep, untroubled sleep of the just. The disastrous dinner was not an isolated incident. It was the opening act of a 3-week-long tragicomedy. My little sachet of pour la régulation parisienne was not a one-time weapon. It was a persistent agent of chaos. And the worst part? The most beautiful karmic part? Tiffany, in her desperate attempt to fix her mysterious and violent illness, believed it was just a stubborn case of traveler's stomach. And in her perfectionistic arrogance, she was convinced the cure was the gentle, all-natural fiber supplement her pharmacist mother-in-law had so thoughtfully provided. She kept taking it, a generous, heaping spoonful, every single morning. She was renewing her own subscription to a private, personal hell. Her perfect itinerary was systematically demolished, one 5-star experience at a time. Their private after-hours tour of the Grand Museum by the river was cut short. Tiffany, admiring a Degas sculpture, suddenly went pale, her hand flying to her stomach. She spent the rest of her once-in-a-lifetime tour in a desperate search for a toilet, leaving Keith to have a very quiet, very lonely chat with a Renoir. Their romantic sunset cruise on the Seine was a disaster. The boat was elegant, the champagne chilled, but Tiffany saw none of it. She spent the entire hour curled in a ball of agonizing misery in the boat's tiny, cramped lavatory. The gentle rocking of the boat, a new and special kind of torture. Her personal shopping appointment at the flagship designer boutique, a moment she had dreamed of, ended in humiliation. She was trying on a devastatingly expensive tweed jacket when the familiar, urgent alarm sounded. She was forced to abandon the jacket and make a frantic dash through the hushed, sacred halls of couture, leaving a trail of shocked and judgmental sales associates in her wake. The dream vacation had become a cursed nightmare. The social stakes escalated. The perfect Instagram feed she had planned devolved into a series of vague, moody, and depressing posts. The triumphant selfies were replaced by blurry shots of rainy streets. Paris is beautiful, even when you're feeling under the weather. Travel struggles. Sometimes the most luxurious thing is a quiet day in the hotel room. Self-care. Her followers were getting concerned. "Are you okay, Tiff?" one commented. "Hope you feel better soon." For an influencer whose brand was built on effortless perfection, this public performance of vulnerability was the ultimate failure. The tension in the suite was so thick, you couldn't cut it with a knife. "Tiff, this is insane," Keith finally snapped, 10 days into their trip from hell. "We are going to the American hospital, now." Tiffany's voice was a tight hiss from the bathroom door. "I am not going to a hospital." "Why? You're sick." "You've been sick since we landed." "Because I am not sick," she shrieked, her voice cracking. It's an allergy. It's the city. The food is too rich. I just need to rest." "Rest? We've been resting for a week and a half. This trip is ruined." "Don't you yell at me," she sobbed. "This was supposed to be perfect." A week and a half into their disastrous, cursed trip, locked in a luxurious prison of their own making, Keith finally broke. They had been forced to cancel yet another non-refundable, Michelin-starred dinner. The opulent suite, which was supposed to be their romantic love nest, had become a very expensive sick bay. The romance was dead. Keith was sitting alone on their private terrace, staring at the gray, rain-swept view of the Eiffel Tower. It was a view that should have been romantic. Instead, it just looked lonely. He looked at his wife, a pale, miserable heap under the expensive linens. He finally allowed himself to face the truth. This was not a random illness. This was not bad luck. This felt biblical. This felt like a targeted, effective, and deeply personal curse. And he knew, with a sudden, sickening certainty, who the witch was. He picked up his phone, his hands trembling slightly. He walked out into the hotel hallway, needing privacy to make the most humiliating phone call of his life. I was in my kitchen, humming as I rolled out the dough for a peach cobbler. My phone rang. I saw his name on the screen. I felt not triumph, but a quiet, sad finality. It was time. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered. "Hello, Keith," I said, my voice calm and gentle. "Mom," he began, and his voice was a raw, broken, and deeply weary thing. "Mom, I'm so sorry." And then it all came tumbling out. The whole ugly, pathetic story. He confessed everything. The plan to ditch me. Tiffany's cold ambition. His own weak, shameful complicity. "It was her idea, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "She planned it all. The fake itinerary, the luxury. She said your $40,000 would barely cover their trip, let alone with me tagging along. She said I was unphotogenic for her brand." He paused, choking on the words. "But I let her do it, Mom. I stood there, and I said nothing. I was a coward, and I've been paying for it every single day since we got here." He described the vacation, the karmic biblical plague that had followed them, the ruined dinners, the canceled tours, the constant, agonizing reality of their Parisian dream. "It's like the city itself is rejecting her, Mom," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and terror. It's like we're being punished. Everything we try to do, every beautiful thing, it turns to crap. Literally." I listened, my expression one of pure maternal sympathy. I made all the right, comforting sounds. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice full of deep, fraudulent concern. "That sounds absolutely awful. The poor dear. It must be a terrible case of traveler's stomach." "No, Mom," he said, his voice dropping to an intense whisper. "It's not. It's something else. I know it is." He was so close to understanding the full, beautiful scope of my revenge. But he wasn't there yet. I let the silence stretch. Then I asked the one question that would break him, the question that would force him to articulate his own sin. "Punish, darling? What on earth for?" There was a long, painful silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his shallow breathing, the distant sound of a hotel service cart rolling down the hall. I was forcing him to say it. Finally, he whispered it, the words torn out of him. "For what we did to you, Mom, at the airport." "Oh, darling," I replied, and my voice was a soothing balm of pure, unadulterated gaslighting. "Don't be silly. That was just a simple mistake, a booking error. It could have happened to anyone." He didn't know what to say to that. My refusal to acknowledge their cruelty, my insistence on their simple mistake, was a more profound and disorienting punishment than any angry outburst could have been. I was not giving him the relief of a fight. I was leaving him to drown in the quiet, cursed waters of his own conscience. The aftermath of that call was a quiet Cold War. The passionate arguments were over, replaced by a thick, heavy, resentful silence. They were no longer a couple on a romantic getaway. They were cellmates, trapped in a 5-star jail of their own making. Tiffany's illness did not abate. In fact, Her continued desperate use of her gentle, all-natural supplement seemed to be making it worse. She was now a pale, weak, and deeply irritable ghost. Her days were spent in a miserable triangle between the bed, the bathroom, and the room service menu, where she would order plain toast and weak tea. Her once sophisticated palate was reduced to the bland beige diet of an invalid. The perfect Instagram feed had ground to a halt. The last post had been 3 days ago, a moody, black and white photo of a rain-streaked window. The caption, Parisian rain. The comments from her followers had shifted from envy to a deeply unwelcome concern. Are you okay, Tiff? Sending prayers. This doesn't seem like you. They were trapped. Their non-refundable first-class tickets home were not for another week. An entire week of more shared misery, of more silent, resentful meals, of more long, agonizing nights in a beautiful hotel room that now felt like the most expensive and elegantly decorated tomb in the world. The dream vacation had become a lesson, a long, painful, and deeply effective lesson. Sometimes, when you try to ditch your baggage, you find it has a way of following you in the most unexpected and unpleasant of ways. The final night of their trip from hell, Keith called again. His voice was hollow, dead. He sounded like a man who had completely surrendered. The hotel doctor came again, he said, his voice a monotone. He's baffled. He's baffled, Mom, Keith repeated, his voice empty. He says it presents like a severe bacterial infection, but all the tests come back negative. He gave her antibiotics. They're not doing anything. He says it's like nothing he's ever seen before. Oh, the poor dear, I said, my voice a perfect soothing symphony of motherly concern. That sounds just awful. I paused, letting the silence build. Then I delivered the first incision. It doesn't sound like a curse, honey, I said, my tone light, almost musing. It just sounds like she's having a strong, persistent reaction to some bad fiber. It happens. Tell her to drink plenty of fluids. I let the word fiber hang in the air between us, a small, innocent, and perfectly placed clue. I heard nothing on the other end of the line, just silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in his tired, defeated mind. Fiber, the supplement, his mother, the pharmacist. And then I heard it, a sharp, sudden, and deeply horrified intake of breath. He had it. He had finally, after 3 long, miserable weeks, connected the horrifying final dots. Mom, he whispered, and his voice was a new and deeply satisfying sound. It was the sound of pure, dawning, and utterly profound terror. That supplement you gave her, he stammered. The one in the little bag. The Parisian one. Mom, what exactly was in it? I let out a small, thoughtful hum, the sound of a woman searching her flawless and deeply reliable memory. Let me see, I said, as if it were a matter of little consequence. It was an all-natural herbal blend. A bit of psyllium, of course, some ginger root for calming the stomach, and, I believe, a rather potent but very effective concentration of senna leaf. I heard him frantically typing on his laptop in the background. He was Googling senna leaf. I knew what he would be finding. Words like powerful stimulant, purgative, not for long-term use, causes severe cramping, violent gastrointestinal distress. I heard a small choked sound. His voice was a strangled, horrified whisper. Oh my God, Mom. I decided in that moment to deliver the final, beautiful, and deeply satisfying twist of the pharmacist's knife. Oh my God, Mom, he whispered again, his voice cracking in terror. She's been taking it every day, a heaping spoonful. She thought it was helping. Oh dear, I said, my voice a masterpiece of mild surprise. That is a strong dosage. And for 3 weeks? Goodness, that would certainly explain the persistence. He was breathing fast now, hyperventilating into the phone. You knew. I knew she had a sensitive stomach, dear. I just wanted to give her something all natural to help her stay light and lovely. I threw her own note back at her. But why? He pleaded. Mom, why? Why what, Keith? I asked, my voice still gentle. Why? All this. It's poison. It is not poison, Keith, I said, and my voice finally turned cold, the voice of the pharmacist, the voice of the woman he'd left standing alone at the airport. It is an all-natural, organic, herbal laxative. I simply provided a product. She administered the overdose for 21 consecutive days. He had no answer to that. The blame was still, technically, hers. And then I delivered the final dose. And you know, I continued, my voice musing and offhand, it's a funny thing about those little sachets. I always make them in batches to save time. It's just more efficient that way. I let that sink in. So you might want to check the rest of her suitcase, in the lining, in the little zippered pockets. Sometimes when a supplement is that effective, it comes with refills. I heard a sound on the other end of the line that was a mixture of a gasp and a sob. I could picture the scene perfectly. Him, staring at the phone in horror, and Tiffany, in the other room, a pale, miserable creature in her $1,000 a night bed, hearing his words, her eyes going wide as she finally understood. Her mysterious 3-week-long illness was not a curse. It was not bad luck. It was not an allergy to Paris. It was a prescription, and it had been administered with a cold, professional, and deeply satisfying precision by the quiet, dusty, unphotogenic pharmacist she had so foolishly and so catastrophically underestimated. I hung up the phone. I did not say goodbye. The consultation was over. I sat there in my quiet, peaceful house. The silence that greeted me was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of a laboratory after a successful experiment has been set in motion. I didn't need to be in that Paris hotel room to see what happened next. I saw it all. I saw Keith drop the phone. I saw him walk, his movements stiff, to that massive cream-colored suitcase, the one she'd been so proud of. I saw him rip it open. I saw his hands, frantic, tearing at the silk lining, violating the perfect curated order of her life. And I saw him find it, tucked deep in another pocket, a second, identical, elegant silk sachet. The refill. I saw him throw it on the bed. It landed on the expensive linens right next to her. I saw her, pale and weak, staring at it as if it were a snake. I saw her look up at her husband, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. She poisoned me, she would have whispered. And I saw Keith, my son, my weak, complacent, cowardly son, finally stand up. I saw him look at the woman he loved, and for the first time, truly see her. No, Tiff, I heard him say, his voice dead. She didn't. She just gave you the medicine. We wrote the prescription. He would have watched her, waiting for an apology, an excuse, anything. And he would have gotten nothing but her outraged, narcissistic fury. You're siding with her? I'm siding with the truth, he'd say. You stole $40,000. You lied to me. You humiliated my mother. And you, in your arrogance, you just kept taking it. That, I knew, was the real end. Not just of the trip, but of everything. I went to my kitchen and poured myself a slow, deliberate cup of evening tea. I thought of them, of their silent, agonizing flight home, of the beautiful hollow life they had built. A small and deeply, deeply satisfied smile touched my lips. The scales had been balanced. the account had been settled, and the prescription, I had a feeling, would not be refilled again. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.